Hungarian Folk Tales. Fisherman John. By the banks of a mighty river stood a fisherman's hut, and in that hut a fisherman lived together with his wife, but alas, they had no children. One moonlit night, the old man went down to the river, and he cast his net. Suddenly he saw something approaching on the waters, and it shined like a star. He watched as it neared him. And what did it turn out to be? A small coffin. And in the coffin lay an infant child, fast asleep. He lifted the coffin from the waters, placed it in his boat, and took it home to his wife. "Look what I caught in the river." And lo, he showed her the beautiful golden-haired child. "We have no children of our own," he said. "We are old. We will raise him, and then we will have someone to care for us." The old woman agreed. Time passed and the child began to go to school. The school teacher had a scrawny little horse. He said to John, for that was the boy's name, "Little John, tell your father he could buy this horse." So John ran home full of excitement and told his father. "Father, my school teacher has a horse for sale. Let's buy it." "We don't need a horse, son. We have neither hay nor oats. How would we feed it?" The boy said, "It could graze in the woods by the banks of the river." So they bought the scrawny horse, and the horse grazed in the woods by the banks of the river. One day, the horse spoke. "Listen, John, at the edge of the village there is a small house. In it, a worn saddle. Ask the owner to sell it. If he won't sell it, steal it." The owner gave John the saddle, for he had no need of it. And little John took it home and put it on the horse's back. Then the horse said, "Go, John, to the edge of the village. There is an old bridle bit. Buy it, and if the owner will not sell it, steal it." But the owner would not sell the bit. So John stole it. Again the horse spoke. "John, go to the village. There is an officer there who has a rusty sword, and if he will not give it to you, steal it." The soldier gave John the sword and told him, "Polish it until it shines. Be a soldier." John returned home and again the horse spoke. "Master Fisherman John, tell your father to buy you new clothes." The old man said, "Son, I cannot buy you new clothes, for I have no money." But John insisted and told his father that he would pay for the clothes. So his father agreed and bought him new clothes. Again the horse spoke. "My dear John, polish the harness, the bit and the sword, then clean the saddle and put it on my back." He continued, "My dear Master John, you have a younger sister whom we shall bring back." John, however, insisted that he had no sister. The horse said, "Yes, you do, at the edge of the neighbouring country. She is locked away and only rarely sees the sunlight. Climb on my back and we shall set off." They went to the edge of the neighbouring country and found the house where the girl was locked away. There the horse spoke. "John, kick the door 3 times. If it doesn't open, strike it with your sword 3 times. If it still doesn't open, look around to see if you can see anything. And if you do see something, jump on my back." "I see an old woman," said John. At that, the horse took off at a gallop, racing along as fast as thought. When they reached the banks of the river, the old woman appeared behind them on a long stick carrying a broom in her hand. And when the horse jumped to the far bank of the river, the old woman struck the surface of the water with such force that the waters parted. She cried out, "Lucky for you that you got away!" Then the old woman went back. The horse said to John, "My dear Master Fisherman John, we will set off again tomorrow, but you must be very careful." The next day they set off again for the house at the edge of the neighbouring country. John kicked the door, then struck it so hard with the sword that it burst open. He grabbed the girl's arm, but he tore her blouse and was unable to pull her out. Again the old woman appeared on the stick with the broom in her hand. John said to his horse, "The old woman is coming!" And the horse raced homeward as fast as the winds of a storm. When he reached the river, he jumped to the far bank. The old woman lashed out at him with the broom and struck the horse's rump, but the horse was still able to leap to the far bank. The old woman cried out, "If you ever return, I will have all of your teeth." The next day the horse said to John, "Fisherman John, we won't go today, but tomorrow we shall. Today we must rest." Then he said, "Dear master, there is a tree in your father's garden with 3 apples on it. Pick them, put them in your pocket, and when we arrive at the house at the edge of the neighbouring country, throw one of them at the top of the door, one at the bottom of the door, and one at the middle of the door, but throw them so hard that you break the door down." So John did as he was told, and when they arrived at the house, he threw the apples at the top, the bottom, and the middle of the door, and the door broke down. The girl, Helen, stood in the doorway. John led her outside, and when they had left the house, John looked to see if he could see the old woman, and indeed, there she sat on her stick with her broom in her hand. John said to his horse, "Oh, the old woman is coming, on a stick, carrying a broom in her hand." So John and Helen quickly mounted the horse, and the old woman chased them. "Fisherman John, look behind us, because I feel that my rump is on fire." Johnny looked back and saw a cloud of dust far behind them. The horse flew onward, and when they reached the bank of the river, the old woman was still behind them, accompanied by 27 magic stallions. John's horse jumped to the far bank. The old woman and the 27 stallions tried to jump the river too, but they fell into its waters and drowned. And today they still lie somewhere beneath the waters of the river, if no one has fished them out. And so John rescued his sister Helen from captivity, and they both lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. A fox seeks shelter. Once upon a time, there lived a wily fox. The old fox was hungry, and so he took a sack and left his home. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark, and he stood outside the house of a rich farmer. He knocked hard on the door, and when asked who was there, he replied, "I'm a poor traveller in need of shelter for the night. Will you take pity on me?" The rich farmer had a good heart, and so did his wife. They let the fox come in and offered him supper. "Kind sir, are there no thieves around the house? I have a fine fat cockerel in my sack, and I wouldn't like to have it taken in the night." "Worry not, Mr. Fox. Nothing has been stolen in my house. You can sleep in peace." "Oh, poor me, my fine fat cockerel has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the cockerel anywhere. The rich farmer was so ashamed that a guest of his had been robbed, and he felt sorry for the old fox as it wailed and moaned. But what could he do? He gave the fox a fine fat cockerel of his own and wished him well. So the fox left with a grateful grin on his whiskered face. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark and knocked hard on the door of a second farm. Good people lived in this house and he was welcomed once more. As they were about to go to bed, the fox began to scour the room as if searching for thieves. Kind sir, let me tell you that I have a fine fat goose in my sack, and I wouldn't like it to be stolen in the night. Worry not, Mr. Fox. Nothing has been stolen in my house. You can sleep in peace. The fox waited for these fine folk to fall asleep, and he opened the sack. And what was in the sack? Why, the cockerel, of course. He took the fat fowl out and ate it all up, feathers and all. Oh, poor me, my fine fat goose has been stolen. They all searched high and low, but no one could find the goose anywhere. The farmer then gave the old fox a fine fat goose of his own to stop him crying and moaning so. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark, and he stood outside a third house. He knocked again, was let in again, but before they went to bed, he turned to the farmer and said, I've put my sack here under the bench, kind sir, but I can't rest in my bed because I should tell you, kind sir, that I have got a fine fat piglet in it. You can sleep in peace, Mr. Fox, the farmer assured him. No matter what is in your sack, there will be no trouble here. Oh, poor me, my fine fat piglet has been stolen. They all searched high and low, but no one could find the piglet anywhere. What else could the farmer do but give the fox a fine fat piglet of his own? When the sky grew dark that night, the fox knocked at another door. They let him in, and again he said the same before they went to sleep. Kind sir, please look out for thieves this night, for I have a fine fat pig in my sack, and I wouldn't like it to be stolen. The farmer glanced at the sack and saw that it had no fine fat pig inside, and knew from its squeals that it was only a piglet. But the wily fox didn't go to sleep. He ate the piglet up, curly tail and all. As soon as the sun rose, the fox began to moan, "Oh, poor me, my fine fat pig has been stolen." The farmer immediately saw the trick and pretended to feel sorry for the old fox. "Don't be so sad, and don't wake the village with your moaning. I'll give you 2 fat pigs instead of 1. Give me your sack so I can put them into it outside." The master went outside with the sack. He had 2 hungry foxhounds. He put them into the fox's sack, tied it up, gave it to the fox, and wished him well. When the wily old fox opened the sack, he saw no pigs. And what should jump out of the sack but the 2 hungry foxhounds? The fox ran as fast as his red legs could carry him. He forgot about his belly and wanted to save his furry hide. But the hungry foxhounds caught hold of his tail and tore him to shreds. If they hadn't, my story would never end. Hungarian Folk Tales. Only donkeys don't eat the spoon. Once upon a time, beyond the snowy Alps, in the cradle of the Carpathian Mountains, lay the land of Hungary, and there lived a king called Matthias. If the old stories are to be believed, then King Matthias liked to see for himself how his people lived. He dressed in the clothes of a simple beggar and wandered the land, where he spoke to his people as their equal. One day he found himself on a vast plain, where all he could see was the small house of a shepherd. So King Matthias approached the house and greeted the good shepherd. It was the middle of winter, so the shepherd invited the king into his home. The shepherd had no idea that this poor beggar was actually the king of the land. He gave him food for his journey, and the king carved his host's name on his stick before he returned to his royal palace. The shepherd had a trusty black sheepdog. The little dog was so skilled and loyal that it never left the shepherd's feet. King Matthias sent a letter to the shepherd inviting him and his trusty sheepdog to the palace. But the invitation did not explain why he was invited or how to find the king's home. So the shepherd made himself look smart, took his crook in his hand, and set off for the king's royal palace, with his sheepdog by his side. When they reached the city gate, they were met by a guard who said, "Hey, old man, stop here. Where are you going?" "To His Majesty the King." "And with a dog?" "But of course," the shepherd replied. "Here you are. You can see the royal letter that invites us both." The guard read the letter from top to bottom. "Oh, old man, you are sure to be richly rewarded by the king. I shall let you pass if you promise to share the great reward with me." "Well, I don't mind. I promise you that half of the reward will be yours." Then the shepherd reached the castle gate. He tried to enter, but was again stopped by a guard. "Hey, old man, stop here. Where are you going?" "To His Majesty the King." "With a dog?" "Well, I have a letter. Here you are." "You were right. You were both invited." But then the guard remembered that there was a banquet inside the palace. The king had called together all the important men in his kingdom. The king obviously wanted to reward the lowly shepherd in front of these rich men, but also planned to play a joke on the old man first. The second guard said, "Old man, you are going to get a great reward. I shall let you pass if you give me half of that reward." "All right, I will give you half of it." So he would give one half to this one, and he had promised to give the other half to the other one, so that would leave him with nothing, wouldn't it? The old shepherd walked into the palace. The king and his courtiers were already seated around the large table. The servants had set places for them all with a bowl, spoon, knife and a fork in front of everyone except the shepherd, who had been given no spoon. The soup was served and everyone helped himself. The first, of course, was His Majesty King Matthias, who raised his spoon and said, "Dear sirs, only donkeys don't eat soup." Everyone took his spoon. The shepherd tried to take his one too, but he had none. "Oh dear, I shall be the donkey now because I cannot eat my soup. I cannot eat soup with either a fork or a knife." But this was not the first time that a poor man had to eat soup without a spoon. The old shepherd simply cut the end off his bread and hollowed it out. The crispy crust made the perfect spoon for eating soup, and he sat and ate every last drop, watched by all the important guests and the king. "Your Majesty said that only donkeys don't eat soup. Well, let me add that only donkeys don't eat their spoon." And the old shepherd gobbled up his soup-soaked spoon in one. The banquet eventually ended and the time came for the king to hand out rewards. And you will never believe what the old shepherd asked for. "Your Majesty, I would like 50 strokes of the stick." "Shepherd, I haven't invited you to beat you 50 times with a stick. I wanted to play a practical joke on you, but you played the joke on me. Therefore, you deserve more than 50 strokes. Tell me now what I owe you." "Your Majesty, you owe me nothing more than 50 strokes. That's all I want." Then the king understood that it had been a joke again. "Very well then, but tell me now why." "Why? The reason is very simple. On my way here I was stopped by a guard at the city gate who refused to let me in unless he could share half of my reward. Then a second guard only let me enter the palace if he too could receive half of my reward. So now one will receive 25 strokes of the stick, and so will the second." And so the shepherd's joke was ended.